And now a message from Jason USA, CEO of Chibson USA, proud sponsor of Meaningful Times with Friends.
The job is to get jumbo picks in the hands of every guitar player by 2026.
I've been booed off stage, kicked out of the studio,
right.
And it's hard for people who want to use smaller picks.
They're going to be outlawing small picks. These guys don't know it.
I like music. Music makes me lose control.
And what we're going to do is have these guitar players play some timeless classics with the jumbo pick. Oasis's Wonderwall, a classic. Stairway to Heaven, another timeless classic. Weezer, the Sweater Song. Everyone loves that. Sounds just like it. Small picks are on the way out. Big picks are going to be the norm. We're just doing our part to spread the word about jumbo hand picks.
Wu-Tang! All right, we're here. Welcome to Meaningful Times with Friends, episode 14. Ramshackle Dan, Nathan from Newark, Jason. Good to see everybody back again. Taking a break from the Battle of the Bads. Did we have any apologies? I don't think we do. That is amazing. Well done, everybody. We've done our part. No fucking apologies. Take that. All right, but kicking it off today, we have sort of a subject that I brought up because initially I was dealing with a lot of it, and then as such, once I brought it up, it seemed to get a little contagious and affected some others here. Death is our first topic. The topic of death. I only brought it up mainly because I lost 3 friends in a span of a week and a half, I want to say. The first one that came to my knowledge was my good friend Sean Boyles. May he rest in peace. Unfortunately, he passed away in the middle of the day. He had one of these rare conditions where blood vessels intertwined in his like brain stem or something. It's a condition that people have, and it's irreversible. It's just if you find out you got it, they can burst at any time. And that's exactly what happened to him at the age of 49 in the middle of a work day. And he just dropped. And so, yeah, my friend Sean, he was a good friend of mine. I met in 2016 in the comedy world. He played in bands for many years, and he was a good friend, as like the 3 friends here. He was as good a friend as all 3 of you are. And it was very unfortunate. And the same day, one of my best comedian friends, just best friends also in general too, Nina G, who you all are familiar with here, and others who watch the show probably. Her mom passed away the very same day, later that evening. Her mom was dealing with some health issues stemming from a situation that happened in July. And so that's a whole other ball of wax that's hers. But that was unfortunate, but it was somewhat a little bit foreseen. And then last but not least was I found out through another friend. Some of you know him, Will, my friend Will from bands past, the Cliftons. We used to work together, and one of the companies we worked at, we became friends with another employee named Jason McKinnon. And he was quite a character. He was kind of a San Francisco hipster, him and his now wife, but then girlfriend, but he would always call her his wife. So that Emily and Jason were kind of a couple. There were a couple of characters, and they were fun to be around. Unfortunately, Will shot me a news link, and Jason was in the news. He was unfortunately the victim of an attack.
What city was this in?
That was in Cincinnati, Ohio. Death is what was clouding my brain. So I said, "Hey, let's talk about death, guys." And because we've definitely dealt with it amongst friends. Oh yeah, that's what I need to apologize for. My bad. I do have an apology. Bringing up this subject killed ramshackle Dan's aunt. Because as soon as I suggested it,
like right after, maybe like a day after this, I get a call from my cousin saying that my aunt was in hospice, and to call back the next morning, she had died, like literally 24 hours after Dave brought this up. So we were supposed to record last weekend, but I had to fly to Boston for a funeral. That was interesting. It was a very Jewish funeral, or it's a Jewish funeral, but you never know exactly how Jewish people are, myself included. So, I had to like bone up and all this stuff. Like I interviewed my friend, Sam. I called his dad and like had a video chat with him to like go, because he's super Jewish. So I wanted to err on the side of like being like prepared, because there's a lot of rules, and you have to do certain things, and it can drag on for 7 days past the funeral. So anyways, did a lot of homework, went there, and it was no big deal. It was very sad, very solemn affair. I did get to be part of a funeral procession. And have you guys ever been part of a funeral procession?
Oh yeah.
no.
So I thought of Dave the whole time, because it's like I'm put in this situation, right? I'm in the car in a long line of cars, like driving through town. And what I didn't realize is if you're in a funeral procession, you don't have to follow any traffic rules. And so you're just like it's like one of the most antisocial ways to like celebrate somebody's life.
Did you guys have a fake motor cop directing traffic?
No, that would have been really helpful.
Okay.
Because people were like honking and like trying to cut in. This is like a 15-minute drive to like a different town. It went from started in Salem, which is a really good place to have a funeral if anyone's ever looking for suggestions. I think the witching capital of the world. But so you're driving through, and like people are like honking and like trying to cut in and like getting angry because nobody's stopping. And it's a long funeral procession. I didn't know the rules around it. I almost got hit twice, like by 2 different cars, because they were so pissed off. And then at the reception, people were like, "Can you believe the nerves of those people? Like everyone knows a funeral procession." I'm like, actually, I didn't. I was really confused as like what we're supposed to be doing. No, that was super tacky of them. I was like, okay. So, anyways, if you guys really want to be in the middle of a very antisocial group action, if there's no flash mobs or pillow fights or SantaCon going on, you guys can always join a funeral procession.
Did you wear a yarmulke in any of the
I
proceedings?
did.
Okay, yeah.
I did. I'm wearing one now. You can't see? Oh, camera issues. I just kind of went along with whatever was going along with. Like, there's no reason to be like a Shiite atheist, So I refuse. Like,
Not wearing your fucking hat. Yeah.
Right. Whatever. So what do you want to talk about, Dave?
I've been very comfortable with the thought of death since a child. I don't think our culture really handles death very well at all. Not only that, it turns into a financial nightmare most of the time in the aftermath of it, because our culture just doesn't want to deal with it. We operate in a culture of consumerism as if we're going to live forever. And as I get older and I'm starting to see people more and more, kind of drop off, I get more anxiety when I'm at my folks' house, and I'm just thinking like, these people are going to have to pass, and they have a lot of shit, and it's going to have to be dealt with. And I look at my room. I live in one room, and still I look around and I'm like, if I die, there's stuff in here that people could definitely, make money off of, but only if they knew what they had. And most likely it's just going to get thrown in the dumps. When I heard my friend died, the person who told me that my friend Sean died said, "Dave, you got to call me. Here's my number. It's not something I can really message you about." And I was like, okay, can it wait though? I had like I was at my parents' house and I had some company over, and he was like, "It's bad news. You're going to want to hit me up ASAP." So I called him, and I'm thinking it's something recovery related, maybe. I don't know, something. He goes, "I don't know how to tell you this, but Sean Boyles is dead." And yeah, it was a shock because I had just talked to Sean the night before. I was messaging with him because he was running my show at Vinny's Bar and Grill in Concord. And he said, "Yeah, I just thought you needed to hear from somebody. I didn't want you to like log on to Facebook and read it on Facebook." And kind of wish I read it on Facebook. That was kind of the nothing against him. Cool dude. Love the guy. And I appreciate what he was trying to do. But however, and then once I heard from him, I was like, God damn it. it's not going to be. It's like, yeah, Sean, I'm going to deal with Sean passing, but you know what I'm going to be dealing more with are people who know that I'm friends with them, good friends with them, and I'm going to have to hear more from all these motherfuckers that mean well. But the most annoying part about it, and Sean would be laughing his ass off at this, is I'm going to have to hear from all kinds of people. Are you okay? Are you okay? I heard about Sean. Are you okay? And I just want to throw my phone and break it because it's like, I'm okay. Sean's not. That's the one who died. I've had a terrible sense of humor when it comes to death. I remember when we were in junior high, we lost a friend. A friend to me more than Ramshackle Dan or Jason, but it was a guy that I knew.
That's a huge bitch.
And I knew him from elementary school, and I got resentful of the way people were handling death at junior high because they were exploiting it more for themselves.
Yeah, that was gross. He was a weird kid. He had some sort of developmental issue.
Yeah.
Both physically and mentally. And people didn't really talk to him. I mean,
he worked in the yearbook. I remember he was always in the yearbook office, and I didn't know about his physical conflicts. Like he was having a lot of health issues. I didn't know about any of it.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like he wasn't fully baked, I guess, to be, because he had a brother that looked
about him. No, please don't. There are some people.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what, Dave? You know what? At least I wasn't the one walking around afterwards going, "I miss him so much. He was an angel."
I said worse. I'm saying it's not that we don't need to sit there and pick the poor guy apart.
But that's what I did to him when he was alive. I used to fuck with him.
No, we all did. We were like kind of nemesis in elementary school. That was the thing. He used to talk shit to me and I would talk shit to him, but it was kind of like on like kind of a weird, like, I respect you, but fuck you, and you respect me, but fuck me kind of response. It was a weird thing. We're like cool with like, yeah, we don't like each other, but we're cool. And when we got to junior high, you were just like happy to know anybody because there were so many more strangers now that you're going to school with and operating in fear of. And so when I would cross paths with, and I would just say, "Hey, what's up?" That's about it. And then he drops dead in 8th grade because he had a liver transplant. I think he was doing okay, but then like a couple weeks after the transplant, something like that, he basically just he died in 8th grade. And
What's his brother's name?
His brother's.
That's a huge bitch.
What are the odds?
That's a huge bitch.
To watch this?
Slim, but you never fucking know.
I got a little bit of a Meaningful Times with Friends exclusive news on this topic. So I want to say like maybe a week or two before he died, I stole his wallet.
I believe it.
Velcro 49ers wallet had $1.25 in there just for lunch. I didn't blame that on Dave because I would never do that. But I feel like since we're cleansing our souls, talking about really heavy issues, thought I'd fess up to that. So, anyways, then he died. So I definitely didn't pretend. Well, that's not really kind of our deal. I don't think any of us are going to pretend but it was super weird when they did that, when people just started pretending like it was such a tragic thing. And that's what people do, is they just want to be drama about something and be involved. And it's really creepy. Anyways, I feel worse actually than better. I'm going to take a minute. Go ahead, Dave.
That was what it reminded me of. As soon as it happened, and then it almost was a relief when I heard from Nina about her mom, because then I was able to talk to Nina. Nina and I had a gig together the next night, and I said, "Give it a minute, think about it, but I think we'll actually feel better for a little bit because we'll be able to talk and hang out and console one another, but also do our gig." And because that's what comedians do. We're sociopaths. We're career sociopaths, and the best way to kind of cope with our feelings a lot of times is to put that on pause and kind of put a lot of energy into making others feel better with stupid shit. And she even talked a little bit about her mom in her set. And I've definitely talked a couple of sets about Sean and my friend Jason. But that's, again, part of, I guess, my mechanism dealing with death. I've talked about another guy that some of us knew, Dan, not Ramshackle Dan, but Dan Samsel. He was a guy that I think all of us knew, who died at a young age also. He was, I think, 19, but he was in Nate's class, I believe.
No, he was a year older than me.
You're older than okay, so a year older than
Yeah.
you. He was good friends with our friend Michael Sills at the time. They were the Brotherhood of the Dong, as I remember. That worked at the pizza place, the shady pizza
Our
place.
local skater crew. Yeah.
Didn't he used to beat up that guy Will?
No, they never beat up Will. He beat up Ryan Carsage or Car.
Oh, that's
He,
right.
he punched Ryan Carsage in the face one day at school. I remember that.
He had no problem being in physical altercations with people, and he was also somehow he was able to both be racist and have friends of different races. That was his other knack.
Also incredibly homophobic.
And
I think
yeah.
I heard him use the N-word more than the skinhead who used to live down the street from me when I was growing up. No joke.
He said every slur around me. I don't know how he got a pass. It was a '90s thing, I guess, because he listened.
I don't think he got a pass. He was violent and he was a bigot, so they, you know.
But he also was not a bad guy. I mean,
When he started smoking weed, he kind of mellowed out a little bit.
well, I smoked weed with him quite a bit.
I did too. Yeah.
But yeah, and one of the things I'll never forget, leading up to his death, was because we got arrested together, me and him. We got this has actually been in my act a couple times too. I just did a show on Friday. It was an open mic with some booked featured comics at a place called Blunts and More, and it literally is right on the same street, right across from the Oakland Coliseum, where I got arrested with Dan Samsel and Mike Sills and Ron, Mike's hetero life mate now that lives in the house with them in Hayward.
I used to buy weed from Ron.
Yeah, we all did, and we got arrested. Me and Dan got arrested. We all got busted by a paddy wagon because we were idiots. We didn't smoke weed in the parking lot. We went around the corner outside the lot, and then sure enough, we weren't even there for a few minutes, and that's when the paddy wagon rolls up on us, and we were like, oh, we're all fucked. And I got busted for having 12 hits of acid on me because I was too stupid to like dump them somewhere.
Dave, can you tell Nathan what was going on at the Coliseum when you got arrested?
Oh yeah, the Grateful Dead. No, I thought I said that. Yeah, it was the Dead parking lot.
Bone Thugs and Harmony concert? No way.
We weren't even going to the concert. We weren't even Dead fans. None of us were.
I've done the same thing at the Shoreline for a Dead show, and I was strictly there just to buy drugs. So yeah, no, I get it.
So we got busted there. I did my whole deal. I got to be on LSD while in the paddy wagon, in the minors section of the paddy wagon, while hearing Dan, super racist behind closed doors Dan, and to a few people's faces, I remember, as he's confronting, while on psychedelics, his worst fear, black men throughout Oakland. and I gotta tell you, it was the funniest shit I ever heard, because he was scared shitless, and I'm hearing it on the other side. I'm not seeing it. I'm just hearing men like, "What are you doing here?" Like fucking yelling at him, and he's just like, "Can you just leave me alone, dude?" And that's terrible.
Oh man.
So that was like in February of 1994, and then later that summer, we were still hanging out. I never took him as a guy that really thought about, much more of just like finding some weed, going to work, trying to, do whatever else, and one day I was, Jason also saw him around that time too, because he mentioned this. He just started taking classes at San Jose State in refrigeration classes. And he was saying something about how he goes, yeah, I actually find this stuff interesting. I think I actually found something that I might be good at and find work in. And I think it's pretty cool. And like, he never really talked to me about all that much. And I was really happy for him. I was just like, yeah, man, maybe, that's great. Just finding something to do. And then 2 weeks later, he got hit by a truck, and when he was riding his bike. So,
Was Mike with him?
Yes. Mike was with him. Mike saw it. He didn't see it actually happen, but he rolled up after when he was looking for him. So,
do you really look at that picture, Dave? Like, there's a lot of sexy boots and stockings going on.
I don't know. I'm focused on our talk here, man. But
you see this guy behind me? This picture. This is an outdoor light. Before the moving company, when I moved here, destroyed it and killed it. This is my little memorial. After 3 months of phone calls and emails, I got a $157 check from their insurance company.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. What are your handlings of death?
Well, okay, so slight counterpoint to you saying that our society doesn't deal well with death. My wife's dad died back in 2016. My wife is from Chicago originally. Her whole family lives out there. Well, not her whole family, but a lot of them. We go out to Chicago frequently. Her dad was born with polio. Not born with polio. He caught polio as a child and was in a wheelchair since he was a very small child. But he grew up to be an absolute prick. He was sort of a tyrant, and he sounded like every Chicago guy out there kind of talked like this. And when he died, finally, I saw a bunch of people come together at his funeral that definitely loved him, but it was like this group catharsis for everybody to come together and memorialize him and talk a bunch of shit. And I think sometimes death can bring people together, and that's what I saw at that. Like, people in Chicago have a different edge on them than we do out here. It's just a whole different thing. And I loved that everyone there finally felt free to say all the shit that they wanted to, not in a mean way, but just to be able to kind of come together and laugh and be like, this motherfucker right here, let me tell you about the one time this happened. And that was like a unique experience for me when it comes to death. Like, when my dad died, it was horrible. He suffered from cancer and died in a year. There was nobody joking, or it wasn't like a jovial, like, let's all laugh at what happened here. It wasn't like that. So it was interesting to see how it went down with my wife's dad dying. I thought that was pretty awesome, So death isn't necessarily always something that involves tragedy. Sometimes someone is kind of a bastard, and you don't have to pretend that they weren't when they go. And yeah, I just, I think sometimes, yeah, death can be a catharsis for sure. It's not always just people sad about it and sitting around moping,
Well, I mean, we kind of did a similar thing for Mario, but I want to say that more or less, I'm saying it's more the culture doesn't it doesn't deal with the subject of death, I think, well enough, like talking about it. Like, just the fact that these things are happening most of the time, people just like, I want to be left alone, or they want to feel like they have the option to like push people away about it. Because I felt the same way. One of the coolest things about seeing, my buddy passing away right now, he was 49. No one could see fully how much he's affected people positively in his life until this happened right now. And they raised over $20,000 for his for the family's funeral expenses in like less than 24 hours. And then they've been having to struggle trying to get it up to 33,000 after they got the final bill. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, the GoFundMe will be in the whatchamacallit, the summary of our episode.
To Nathan's point, I don't think it's specific to death. Maybe it's my point, not Nathan's point, but I don't think it's specific to death. I think we as a society treat things inconsistently, erratically. There's that old quote that's attributed to Stalin, right? A single death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic. Because there's like death of one person, it's like a big deal. You hear about like a mass shooting and it's like, it's a big deal, not quite as big a deal. Then but you get numb to war, right? Or you see people, just random people on the news, like Nathan probably listens to a shit ton of like news all the time because of his job. And it's just, you get numb to certain things, but they're no less or more horrific. It's just the way we deal with things just generally is kind of, there's just too much in the world to process. And I think people process and prioritize things differently. And some people just are on autopilot for certain shit. And like that whole thing you're talking about with, people pretending to be really sad, maybe that's what they thought they were supposed to do,
No, and I don't even think that they were pretending. If anybody who really knows me, which like all of you guys, I sent you a text about it. I responded to it by saying like, I love you guys. I wanted to let people know in my immediate life who I, take for granted on a regular basis, and go see movies when I'm supposed to be here and recording an episode, and have to hear about it the entire delayed ride on public transportation from one specific person. But no, my response to a lot of this stuff is a reminder of to be present and remind the people in my life that I feel is the ones mainly who I feel good about, that I love them, care about them, and yada yada. And the coolest thing, again, when I was saying that my friend, yeah, it sucks that he's not here, and I'm going to be missing him, periodically as I would hear from him. But he was 49, and you think about it, and I'm like, he died at want to say like a peak point of, like you say, singular person popularity. He intersected with so many different people that there were people that were finding out that they had him in common in the news of all of this. Turns out one of the guys who was doing sound for the show he was running in Hayward at the Bistro, he was in a band with one of my cousins years ago. And just things like that. And there were a lot of connections, and a lot of people came together. Whereas if you die when you're 80, unless you got a family around you that you cultivated the entire time, or even if it's just one other alternate other, how many people are really going to be, celebrating you in that aftermath? I was just kind of, again, it was one of those things where, yeah, it sucks to have this happen. Sometimes, just like Nate said, there are good things. We haven't heard yet from our fourth member, who again has had probably the most direct dealings with death in the most recent years. So, Jason?
Well, I don't know. I kind of want to change gears a little bit rather than like get into like who I know who died and how they died and what happened and all that. I mean, I'll just say, my father died, and my partner of 20 years very suddenly died. My father after a long illness, but my partner completely out of the blue. I said goodnight, went to bed, woke up the next day, and he was dead on the floor. But, rather than like talk about them, because I still have a hard time talking about it without completely losing my shit, especially Gary. I just recently went to DC, where his family lives, and scattered his ashes on his mother's grave after a year, because it happened a year ago. And I still couldn't talk about it at the cemetery. I couldn't say anything. And then we had a big party, and that was cool,
Tell them what happened, what you found.
What I found? What did I find?
Not you found, some part of the crew found.
One of Gary's sisters found on the ground at the cemetery $1,000. So on our way out of the cemetery, we split up the cash. So I ended up walking away with $200.
Nice.
Kind of puts my petty crime in perspective, huh?
Good.
$1.25. Wow.
So yeah, but anyway, I don't know. I kind of, what I find interesting is especially I find this interesting because I had to, I deal with it a lot. With my father dying, my mother is, Christian and religious, and I have family that are very, very Christian and very, very religious, and navigating like how conversations with them work when they're talking to me, who is, I used to try to be fucking pretentious and fancy and say, oh, I'm agnostic because I don't really know. But the bottom line is, I don't believe there's a God. I think religion is bullshit. And I think that the concept of God is just people desperately seeking meaning outside of themselves, where I think that our meaning personally, I think, has to come from within ourselves. And whereas a lot of people are really uncomfortable with the idea of not having a structured belief system to base their lives on, I prefer the ambiguity of not knowing how the world started. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What matters is I'm here, and I have to live my life until it's over. And so instead of like getting into all that shit, like when talking to my family members or talking to people who have devout religious beliefs and believe that like my father is, now he's up in heaven with his family and everything's happy for him, and he went to his greater reward and all that stuff that I personally think is a load of hooey. I've come to the decision that it's best for me, what I believe now, because my personal belief is that when we die, we're dead and we're gone and we rot, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Your consciousness is here when you're alive and it's gone when you're dead. There is no soul. I think that's absurd. It's just chemical processes. It's just kind of a miracle. Yeah, sure, it's a miracle. but it's an accident that everything around us is here. So, but instead of like kind of like having that conversation with people, like, yeah, you say my father's like up in the sky or whatever with the Lord, which I don't believe that shit. I just choose to believe like whatever that person believes, that's what happened to them when they died, So, because I feel like we are self-determined, and so that has to extend to other people's belief systems. As far as I'm concerned, if their belief system is that they all drink poison, put themselves under a purple shroud, wear white Nikes, and catch Hale's Hale-Bopp comet off to their home planet, that's exactly what happened to those people at Heaven's Gate. You know what I mean? I just feel like having respect for people means respecting their beliefs to the point where they can have what they believe, and if I don't believe it, I don't have to argue with them about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really hard to have somebody pass away and then navigate a whole lot of conflicting beliefs about what that means. So the best way of going about it, I think, is just to kind of say, well, what you believe, that's exactly what happened. Yes. So when we scattered Gary's ashes at the cemetery, his sisters wanted to take a photograph while we all looked up at the sky and held hands, to say goodbye to Gary. And so I did that, you know what I mean? And they were like surprised because they knew they know who I am, they know me, and they're like, you looked up. I'm like, well, yeah, I looked up. You wanted me to look up, I'm gonna look up, you know what I mean? It's like I'm looking up, whatever, it's cool.
I hope there is a heaven just so you can feel stupid.
Yeah. Like, oh shit.
Even if there is, I won't feel stupid because you know what?
You'll just be like, this sucks. Heaven sucks. I wanted nothing. Somebody had a bit, and I forget what it was. Pete Holmes. He has a really good bit currently in his Netflix special about atheism and in relation to whether you believe in God or not, and whatever. And that if you do believe that there's nothing, and then we return to nothing. If this all came from nothing, then we are returning to our Creator. And I've always looked at religion as always being very egotistical, like as a species. Whether it came from real events and they distorted them for whatever, it's clearly about something else. And it's not very attractive, I've always found. But I find what spirituality I have in my 12-step program and hasn't brought me any closer with religion, but it's definitely made me more tolerant of people.
Isn't one of the 12 steps believing in a higher power? Not specifically any, but isn't it like
believing in a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity? That's the ultimate thing. And atheists are able to work in the program and all that stuff. My higher power, I really just is something that I cuss to, and public transportation is fucking me over. And beyond that, I'm grateful that I'm able to just get through a day without needing to drink or get high, and whatever happens within that day is okay. Oddly enough, like, it's so strange how my world is just kind of whittled down to that, and that's to me a good day. Which back when I was still getting high and drinking, I wouldn't see it that way at all. So basically, like, young me would look at old me and be like, "That's fucking terrible. I wish I was dead now." It was funny thinking about death in relation to kind of the stuff that came up, because I really didn't know I just wanted to talk about it again because like my dad, he does not want to even acknowledge death. He hates it. He hates going to hospitals. He hates anything surrounding it. And oddly enough, I've never felt uncomfortable by it. Not saying like I embrace it or I handle it so well. I really don't know. I just know that I think I've had a level of sociopathic nature in me since I was young, and started seeing, dead people in caskets at funerals, from my Uncle Larry to my great grandmother, and then young people who were passing away. We had our friend, the family friend of Mike Sills, Rob, that one guy who was really cool. I think only Jason and Ramshackle might have met him a couple times.
We went to his funeral together.
Yeah, no, and he was a really cool dude, young guy. Mm-hmm. We don't know if it was at his own hand or if it was truly an accident cleaning a gun. We don't know. We were young. I've been witness to so much of that growing up, and I've been fortunate. Yeah, all four of my parents are still alive, but we're getting into the years where it's like, no, we have to talk about it. We have to kind of like plan for what the aftermath of all of that. And I'm very grateful that my mom and my stepdad are willing to talk about it. It's uncomfortable, but we bring it up, and because we know it's kind of an inevitability. And me being selfish, I would choose more Sean's route of like, yeah, dropping dead now, so I don't have to go through all that shit, because I'm a self-centered motherfucker. And I don't like the idea of getting older and having to rely on more people to take care of me that don't give a fuck about me just because that's their job. And so what I'm saying, like, the culture doesn't, I think, embrace death well. There are cultures from, what people would deem primitive or whatever, tribal and all of that, who incorporate death in so much more of a healthier manner because it's an inevitability. And that's what I see it at. It's just an inevitability. Just like going to school when you're 5 to you're fucking 18, having to get a job, having to do anything else that's pay taxes. Death is an inevitability. And why our culture does so much more to exploit both the emotions and the financial circumstances around it, as opposed to just having a healthier way to embrace it, and I wouldn't say so much welcome it, but not be so afraid of it. And because it's exploited again on the grander scale, we're seeing, terrible things happening, war-wise in other parts of the world. Yeah, it sucks seeing kids dying, but on the other hand, I'm also like, well, at least they don't have to fucking deal with a lot of this bullshit for the rest of their lives. Because in some areas of the world, I'm not sure what's better. But it's not for me to say.
I think we can all agree on this. Maybe in closing, is that we'll all be sadder when your stepdad dies than when my stepdad died. I think we can all agree on that.
When Mark, Mark loves, because Mark watches these episodes. We lose one viewer. By the way, we're losing, views. God damn it, motherfuckers! If you're watching these, watch them, man. Keep up with them. We need these. I don't know where our audience is dropping off to, man.
No, that's one
We're all dying or something.
Yeah, no shit, man.
One thing I find surprising is that we get so few comments when it's, especially for things like Battle of the Bads. Like, isn't that supposed to be like prime fodder for engagement? And people are supposed to be like, no, man, you fucking aren't talking about my band, and your band is worse than that band. Like, why aren't people?
It's because you decided to pick a fight with Death Grips Nation, and they're all boycotting us.
Yeah, we have yet to get. I don't think a Death Grips fan watches us yet, like a true Death Grips fan.
Other than Nathan.
Yeah.
I don't know if this really was as helpful as I thought it might be. We have a much more fun discussion for our next topic. Just our recent chat threads and some of our nonsense. One of the things that came about was not just one movie, but 2 movies related to music of sorts. They were movies that came out in the 90s when we were younger. One being more of a studio-driven film, and the other being an independent film, but both of them satirizing a popular element of the culture back then, and that was rap music. So this is the discussion of CB4 versus Fear of a Black Hat. These were 2 movies that I think had an influence on the 4 of us in a sense, just in terms of entertainment, but also, I don't know, they were kind of articulating some of our observations about rap at the time through entertainment. And at the same time, both of them somewhat underrated. People enjoy them, but they're not always brought up in like people's, top movies or comedies of the 90s or whatnot. So
I saw CB4 one time because back in high school, I think, or whatever, it came out. I was always very anti Saturday Night Live. Not always, but I became very anti Saturday Night Live. So it immediately had marks against it because it was a Saturday Night Live guy. There were a couple jokes that I always thought were really funny. So I mean, it was okay. I thought it was okay. But Fear of a Black Hat, I took to immediately because I think also part of the reason is because it was an independent production, so it felt more in line with what I was interested in, which was like, kind of indie underground shit. And also because it just felt a lot more inventive in that there was so much material in it, like so many songs and just genres, and they just really went all over the place, and a lot more jokes. And I just thought it was a funnier movie. I recently watched both of them again for the first time in a long time, and my estimation of CB4 kind of rose dramatically. Like, I really thought it was a lot funnier than I remembered. Like, I always remembered like a couple of the jokes being really funny, like I always loved Candy Alexander, and I thought she was great. And the whole 976 gay thing I always thought was really funny. Yeah, I'm looking at your balls. Yeah, you got big balls, or King Kong balls. I always thought that was hilarious. But a lot of the other stuff in the movie was funny too. Although I have to say, like, I kind of have problems with the premise of not being able to come up with his own name, like the whole like stealing the name Gusto. Like, it's such a weird premise to me. Like, how did he get away with that? Like, how did they become a popular group when he so clearly ripped off his name from somebody else? Like, and they become local celebrities, but then suddenly everybody forgets that there was this other Gusto out there. So that kind of bothers me. But I'm completely lost my train of thought. But anyhow, let me just say, I like Fear of a Black Hat better than CB4.
Oh, look at that. Talked a lot more about CB4. Likes Fear of a Black Hat more, though. Interesting.
How did you feel about Rusty Cardiff's chest? It really bothered me.
Cundiff.
It's not a great chest. He does not have a great chest. That's for sure. Yeah.
It was confusing to me. I don't understand
I didn't pick up on his chest.
He's a
what
little
about
boobular.
it was confusing?
Like, he's got like kind of a very rounded.
You can't tell if they're pectorals or if they're man titties.
Okay.
Or like B cup implants. They're really strange. he's also sitting opposite, Lamar Latrell.
You're talking about these people like people know. Rusty Cundiff is ice cold, the head of Fear of a Black Hat, or the Fear of the NWH, which is a play on NWA. If you want to know what it stands for, do the math.
Who's the actor that played Tasty Taste and Lamar Latrell?
I don't know the name of the actor that was Lamar Latrell from Revenge of the Nerds, but yeah, he's Tasty Taste, right?
Yeah.
It's like Larry something.
Is it? I don't know. Let's look it up.
The only reason I know his full name from Revenge of the Nerds is because when they did the ergonomically gay javelin, they said next up for Lambda is Lamar Latrell, and then they had him running in with that ergo javelin.
I hadn't seen Fear of a Black Hat since I'd probably seen it originally back in '93 when it came out, or probably sometime in '94 possibly, when we all lived in that house together. Me,
Ramshackle Dan,
Doug, Ramshackle.
I lived there too.
Larry B. Scott.
And Ramshackle Dan lived in that house. What was it?
Larry B. Scott.
Yeah. I just looked
okay. Got it. But I hadn't seen that movie since those days. I remember our friend Mario loved Fear of a Black Cat. We used to watch it. I watched it together with him once or twice, but I hadn't seen it since then. I've seen CB4 multiple times over the years. I feel like it shows up on Netflix and maybe even cable back when I had cable years ago. So I didn't even rewatch it because I've seen it so many times. The things that stuck out to me were that these had a lot of similarities. Like, I think both movies sort of parodied CNC Music Factory. Like, CB4 had Wacky D at one point doing a song called Wacky D is in the House. And then Fear of a Black Hat, he does the PUSSY song, Political Unrest, Stabilized Society, Yes, which also had a strong CNC Music Factory vibe to it. And I'm sort of the opposite of Jason. I feel like Fear of a Black Hat rose in my estimation when I watched it last week. There was a scene where there was like a rap superstar concert that they were all going to be performing at, and Rusty Cundiff's character is sort of talking about all the dudes named Ice that are over in a corner, and it was like Ice Box, like, I don't know, there were like 4 or 5
Ice
different
Water.
rappers named.
Yeah.
It was a white dude with an ice name, but like it had some good satire in it. So
Dyke Spingleton.
Right.
Angry before they were. Yeah, Glassy before they did.
I was short before he was. Yeah. I don't know. There was a lot to unpack with Fear of a Black Hat. There's a lot going on there. CB4 is more of just kind of a straight up comedy, but they're very similar in a lot of ways. But yeah, I still give the edge to CB4, but I think Fear of a Black Hat is a lot better than I remember it for sure.
Were we supposed to watch these? Okay. Yeah, I watched Fear of a Black Hat last night. So I watched CB4 not too long ago, and I was surprised, like Jason was, that it really held up. And it works. It still works in terms of like political commentary. And Phil Hartman was great because Phil Hartman's always great. He can't not be great unless he was. Well, now he's dead, so he can't help not being great anymore. But anyways. That one, so I think the main difference between them is that CB4 was a story about a guy who wanted to be a rapper and tried literally everything until this one. And if you remember his other, like Jason was saying, I can't remember if he stole that guy's name. Like, I mean, one of his previous attempts was they were the bag heads.
Bag head.
Bags on his head. So it's not like he was a fountain of creativity. So that that had a story arc about a guy who wanted to be a rapper, his kind of the cautionary tale from his dad and all that stuff. It was like just a full movie arc where Fear of a Black Hat is just a full on parody of the genre. That's all it is. It's like it's just making fun of every single aspect of rap and rap culture. So I don't know which one's better. Like I like the music better in CB4 because it's probably done by professionals. It wasn't done by the movie. Although I will say, Dave, in terms of being inspired, like "Fuck the Security Guard" did inspire me to become a security guard. So
it inspire you to what? Nate was laughing.
Fuck the Security Guard did inspire me to become a security guard.
All right,
so I thought it was.
I got that on record. So
that's probably my favorite song in there. It's the catchiest. The other thing in there that I noticed watching it this time through is I can't remember the whole thing about like not wanting to be a gangster or being a gangster is bad, but they had a bottle of gangsta champagne, and I looked around. I can't believe that's not an actual product. Do you realize like how many Marin wine moms would be so into drinking like gangsta champagne?
Isn't that just Cristal? That's what.
No, but the label of the champagne said gangsta on it in the video where he's in the tub with the lady.
Cristal was in so many of the. I mean, all the gangster rappers became, moguls, and the sign of it was being able to have Cristal that you could spray all over a woman's titties and shit. So it was, it's might as well be gangster.
I'm pretty sure Snoop Dogg has his own wine brand.
They all do.
Oh,
they all
do.
Jay-Z, the
sure.
vodkas, the tequilas, they did all that shit. I watched them both because I haven't seen either in a good long while, but I had a lot of the same impressions that I did then. Because CB4, I knew it had trailers. I saw it when I don't know if I saw it in theaters, but I remember it being a thing that they were promoting back then. Because it was one of the SNL actors that they were building a movie around, and they had some other not so much stars, but they had working actors that you recognize from other stuff, like Candy Alexander from News Radio. They have Alan Payne, who also was in New Jack City with Chris Rock. And then the third guy is Deezer D, who you probably don't know him all that well from stuff, but Deezer D is one of the few actors that's also in Fear of a Black Hat, because he's one of the Jam Boys, who are the rivals of NWH. And in the Jam Boys also is a very young Faison Love, comedian best known for the role of Big Worm in Friday, as well as other movies. I remember Fear of a Black Hat was more of kind of like Clerks. It was a word of mouth movie that I didn't know about until I want to say it was Ramshackle Dan or somebody, one of you guys, who told me about it. And told me like, oh, you got to check out this movie, Dave. It's funny and whatever, right up your alley. And nobody mentioned the format of Fear of a Black Hat that it's most closely linked to is Spinal Tap. It's basically the Spinal Tap approach to rap, doing the documentary style. And there's a lot of people in it. There's another actor, most known for the role of Pootie Tang, but Lance Crowther, I don't know how it's pronounced, but he's both in CB4 at the death of the producer guy. I forget his name. He's got a funny name, but the guy who died, he the real Gusto pulls a gun on him and he chokes and dies. And then they have the funeral and there's the guy that rolls up and like, I don't care if you're dead, you better have my money. That's Pootie Tang. And he was a writer, actor, and a lot of all this stuff, working with Chris Rock and with these guys, Rusty Cundiff, also big writer and creator, comedy writer. And they ended up having a lot more of people that were in the movie who were also directors. There's a lot of people, I don't remember, Jeff, the director of Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jeff Burr is in the movie. He plays a security guard or plays a cop, actually. Lance Crowther, Pootie Tang, is also, he's not in a speaking role, but he plays a street vendor in one shot of the movie. The lady who's interviewing the whole time, who's making the documentary, that's Cassie Lemons, who most people probably recognize her as the friend in Candyman, the original Candyman, but she also went on to be a critically acclaimed director of several movies, like Eve's Bayou, I think, was one of them. And so she's been working in a lot of behind the scenes roles and stuff, as well as acting. I think she was also in Silence of the Lambs. She was Jodie Foster's friend. That's right. Fear of a Black Hat seemed to be like, again, like much more heavy on the satire because they had songs. What was funny is they managed to incorporate, I want to say, both the corny style, like of the clothes and all that stuff with the hats, but also like the very colorful kind of stuff and the gangster aspect. They just mishmashed it all into one. And CB4, I want to say, yeah, it was more story based. And I think they aimed it more at kind of the story behind, like, you know, I don't want to say it was necessarily NWA's exact story because some of the members of NWA even appear in the movie. So if they felt dissed by it, I don't think they would have appeared in the movie. But a lot of it hinted to the fact that a lot of NWA kind of played up a lot of their mythology of being gangsters, when really these were guys that were much more like what CB4 was depicting. They were guys trying to throw anything at the wall that stuck in rap history at whatever was popular at the time. You can find old Dr. Dre records with him looking corny in white outfits or whatever, part of some groups, and they were trying to do whatever was, just trying to find something that worked. And then they got this idea of you know, making something grimier. That I think it started with Eazy-E because Eazy-E was a drug dealer, and they kind of wanted to build it around his world. You can watch there's other, was it Straight Outta Compton's a movie that's you know, it's tells the story of it, but I know there's a lot of dramatic license. But so I think CB4's story kind of was more depicting, I think, one thread of that, where people kind of play up a lot of the appearances of gangster rap and kind of the critique of that. I only remember 2 songs in the, I mean, there's Straight Out of Low Cash, and Low Cash came from the writer Robert Low Cash. He's one of the writers of the movie, so they named a city after him. But the other song was Sweat From My Balls, or Sweat of My Balls, which they both had a moment. Both movies had a moment that's was depicting like the moments where you can't play this song or else you're going to get arrested. But Fear of a Black Hat ended up having more music. They had more songs, and the songs weren't as well produced, but they were funnier. They were more like Weird Al kind of approach to gangster rap. But it was kind of a jam together all of these different jokes about all of the varieties of rap. I don't really have a preference for, like, I think I told you guys, I think CB4 is a better overall movie telling a story, but Fear of a Black Hat to me is funnier. Like, I'll laugh more at Fear of a Black Hat than I do. And I do love Charlie Murphy and CB4. That was the one thing. I don't know what took so long getting Charlie Murphy into the public eye, because you didn't see Charlie Murphy after CB4 until the Chappelle Show, and that was a good like 5 to 6 years later. And I thought him playing what essentially is Charlie Murphy was hilarious in CB4, and I expected him to be like, you know, a lot more popular sooner, and then it didn't happen until years later.
There's a couple of elements that I'll be remiss not to mention. So one of the songs, the best songs out of the CB4 is "I'm Black Y'all." That was hilarious.
I was going to mention that too. That's
the production of it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And the way they filmed it, and just like smash cut, and like raising his fist. That was brilliant. And then on the Fear of Black Hat side, the whole Kill Whitey thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kept, like, that was one of the things they kept doing. That was signature to the Fear of Black Hat, was all these ridiculous rationalizations. Like, he kept trying to rationalize everything, every action. He would go into this like complete stream of bullshit, which is right after my own heart. And eventually he started talking about just one particular white guy, Whitey DeLuca.
Yeah.
Their former manager who died mysteriously.
Right. That was also a good running gag with the manager dying.
On par with "I'm Black Y'all," there was because both movies experience a breakup with the group. They both, you know, so they have similar beats. But in the Fear of a Black Hat side, when they started doing solo stuff, what's his name? Tone Deaf spun off into the PM Dawn gag of "I'm Just a Human Being," which could have gone a little further in making fun of. But he kind of always looked more the PM Dawn-ish guy. There was that one scene where they talked to that one manager because they didn't want to sign with one guy because they started having stipulations about them having to tailor their act. And then they go to this other manager who's acting like he's really more on their side, but he just gets them to do the same shit that they would have done with the other thing. He just played up their egos more, and was like, he was commenting on which shade of blackness each one had and their likeness to like someone in history who was great. And I remember when he looked at Tone Deaf or whatever. Tone Deaf's wearing like the biggest mushroom hat out of all of them. That's just like real colorful. And he's like, this guy, Redbone, Malcolm X looking motherfucker. So it's, I don't know. Anyway, but I think both of them were effective and highly underrated for their time. And yeah, if you haven't seen these movies, go watch them and then comment. Yeah, engage with us. Tell us we're wrong.
He mentioned before that I can dance.
Yeah, the celebrity cameos in CB4 are pretty great. The people they got to sort of pretend that they were talking about CB4, like Halle Berry, the real young Shaquille O'Neal. You got Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and the Butthole Surfer.
Butthole Surfer.
Kind of
What did Gibby Haynes say?
He was making love to his first black woman.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And he actually had sweat on his balls.
Coming from his balls. That's right. Yeah. Happens. Right on. Did we get enough talked about? I'm going to take your silence as affirmative. All right. Well, that's that, everybody. Hopefully you got something out of it. Death, CB4, and Fear of a Black Hat. So no music this week because we got way too much music to deal with in the next few weeks. So, well, these also dealt with music too. So, we got the music base covered. So, all right. Well, thank you. Thanks for enjoying another episode of Meaningful Times with Friends. Without further ado, Jason, Nathan from Newark, Ramshackle Dan, myself, me, and Dave. Hope you don't die. And if you do, just go with it, motherfucker. All right? Cool. Later.